What if a large number of scientific studies had found that there was one activity that could improve our cognitive function, help our memory systems to work, help us to learn language, help us to moderate our emotional states, help us to solve complex problems, and help our brains to be healthier into later life? What if that activity, unlike the momentary pain of a vaccination needle, is actually enjoyable for everyone involved? Now, you might be expecting me to reveal a new superfood we could eat some more of. Maybe a pill we could take every day, or an exercise regime we could start. But actually, this activity is as old as our cultures and societies itself. And that activity is music education. So when it came time for me to choose a topic for my PhD study, it became pretty clear pretty quickly. I wanted to know if music education benefited brain development. What I found was a huge amount of research, now 2 decades worth, conducted by neuroscientists. And the neuroscientists had stumbled on something kind of by accident. They were looking at the brain functions and structures of musicians, and literally their brains looked different. And they functioned differently, and in many cases, far more effectively. Now, the technology that helped the neuroscientists allowed them to see our brains working in real time. And what they did is they used fMRI machines and PET scanners to watch what was happening. They would get the participants to do all sorts of tasks, reading, maths problems, and they would see certain areas of the brain light up. But when they asked the participants to listen to music, they saw fireworks. They had never seen so many areas of the brain light up at the same time. Well, what they found is that music education works 3 areas of the brain at once: the motor, visual, and auditory cortices. If we think about it, it's like a full brain workout. It's like our legs, our arms, and our torso doing an exercise at the same time. Music education is exercise for the brain. And among many, many other things, they also found that musicians had a larger bridge, a larger corpus callosum across the 2 hemispheres of the brain, which allowed the messages to travel far more quickly and in very, very creative pathways. So what did this brain exercise mean for how musicians' brains actually functioned? Again, among many, many other things they found that musicians were able to solve puzzles and problems far more effectively and creatively. They found that musicians had higher levels of executive function. Now, executive function is a complex group of activities in our brain that solve those really, really complex problems that have logical, strategic, conceptual, emotional elements to them. They also found that musicians had very highly developed memory systems in their brain, and that they thought this might have happened because when a musician makes a memory, they actually put tags against it: an emotional tag, a visual tag, a conceptual tag, a contextual tag. And overall, so far, with these 2 decades of research that we now have, they have found that music education raises the general cognitive capacity of anyone who undertakes it. Now, I'd like to share with you 2 studies which, to me, highlight some of the many applications and impacts that music education could have. The first one involves babies. 18 very trusting mothers allowed their beautiful babies to be put into fMRI machines so the neuroscientists could monitor their brain functions as the mothers spoke to them. What the neuroscientists saw is that the babies were using their music processing networks to understand their mothers' voices. Literally, they were hearing music in their mothers' voices. Now, in every area of scientific study, it is incredibly important to ask big questions and to look at the myths that exist in that area. And there are 2 big ones in this area, and they are that to play music we need to be smart, and to play music we need to be talented. Neuroscientists have now done a large number of randomised studies that have showed that music education impacts everybody who undertakes it. You don't need to be smart to start with. And if we think back to that study about babies, we're all born musical. We have to be to understand language. It is the experiences and the opportunities that we have in life that realises that talent. And this gets me thinking even more about the fact that music education could be the glue that could bring together so many things that we are dealing with in our education systems and our societies today. Let me give you some examples. Learning disorders. At the moment, many of them understood to be a miscommunication between the left and the right hemispheres of the brain. And as we saw earlier, music education actually makes those two sides of the brain work together really well. ADHD, again, at the moment understood to be a mistiming between the motor, visual and auditory cortices. And again, we saw before, music education actually makes the three areas of the brain work together incredibly well. If we take it another step further, music education has been found to help us acquire and understand language and to solve complex problems, many of which involve numbers. How might universal music education change literacy and numeracy in this country and in many countries around the world where it's a very hot topic? Music is a beautiful and wonderful art form that almost every human being on the planet enjoys in so many different ways every single day. But maybe we're missing an opportunity with music education that could change our world in ways we have no idea of. Music education should be essential for every child. And if you look at our national curriculum and many national curriculums around the world, it is a core part of it. And yet, in a research study recently released here in Australia, 1.4 million children today do not have access to a music teacher in their school. Music education is not for the talented. It is not a luxury, it's not an add-on, it's not a bonus, it's not a nice thing if we had some extra money. It is essential.